Welcome to the Fibromyalgia podcast. I'm Tami Stackelhaus, fibromyalgia coach, author, and founder of the International Fibromyalgia Coaching Institute. The goal of this podcast is to empower you with access to the dream team of experts and coaches I've discovered are key to living the fibro life you love. From the comfort of your own home, and maybe even your pajamas, I'll help you take back control of your life and health. To help out with Fibro Fog, I always include full show notes and additional resources at fibromyalgiapodcast.com. You're listening to the Fibromyalgia Podcast with Tami Stackelhaus, episode 54. Welcome to the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm your coach, Tami Stackelhaus. In today's episode, I am going to help you get your year off to the right start. Today, we're talking about how the right mindset can help you live your best life with fibromyalgia. Stay tuned as I interview one of my friends, Courtnajé Davis, about what happens between our two ears. Before we dive into today's episode, however, I do have our listener shout out for you and a couple of quick announcements. This email comes to us from a listener in Western Australia. She says, I'm recently diagnosed, but I have had chronic pain and suffered from fatigue for many years. I am really enjoying your podcasts. As a newbie, I'm trying to learn as much as I can and absorb information. It not only is reassuring, but it also gives me good tools and understanding. So thank you. Brain fog makes it a slow process, but listening to podcasts is so much better than trying to read without falling asleep. Thank you so much for sending this in. I love that as a newbie, you're able to get some good tools and absorb information and understand your illness better. I totally get that brain fog can sometimes make reading a little bit difficult. I know when I'm feeling super foggy, sometimes reading is not the way to go. So I'm so glad you found our podcast and that it is being helpful for you. Thank you so much. A couple of quick announcements. Our next Stories of Hope and Healing event is on January 30th. We are going to be celebrating the people who are graduating from our most recent training programs. But most importantly for you, these graduates are going to be talking about the things that they've been doing to improve their fibromyalgia. So they're going to be talking about the things they've learned, the changes they've made in their lives, the way their coaches have helped them. So I really hope that you will come, be encouraged, and maybe learn some new ways that you can help yourself. The information for this will be found on today's show notes page. So just go to fibromyalgiapodcast.com/54 and you'll get all the details for our Stories of Hope and Healing event on January 30th. I also wanted to let you guys know that our next Fibromyalgia Advisor training and certification program begins on February 9th. This is the first step for people who want to become a coach, but it's also a great step for those who are super interested in learning, want to know as much about their fibromyalgia as possible, and really want to learn all the ways that they can improve their own fibromyalgia. That class starts again on February 9th. So just go to fibromyalgiapodcast.com/54 and we'll have the link where you can find out more about the class. I also wanted to let you know about our next episode. It's so fantastic. I've already recorded our next episode, and it's an interview with Jennifer Kohler at Atlas Dog. Atlas Dog is a nonprofit organization that helps owners train their dogs to be service animals. So in that episode, Jennifer and I talk about emotional support animals, service animals, the rights for each, what you can and can't do, what each one is, right? What's a service animal? What's an emotional support animal? It's a fantastic interview. I hope you are here to hear that next episode for episode 55. Now, today's interview, I'm also super excited about, and this is with my friend Courtnajé Davis, aka Courtnajé. She is a former corporate sales executive that left behind her career to start her own business, coaching sales tactics and coaching through mindset practices and goal oriented training. She believes there is no goal that cannot be accomplished. The plot twist here is that she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2020 after more than a year of testing and doctor's visits. And she really gives her mindset practice credit for the adjustment and transition that came into play after being diagnosed with a chronic illness. Now, this isn't part of her official bio, but I also want to add part of the reason that I invited her to be on the podcast and why I wanted you to hear her story is because she was diagnosed with a heart condition as a baby. She has had multiple heart surgeries and has basically lived her entire life with this particular health condition. As part of living with that, she really developed amazingly strong mindset practices because of her sales background, because of her health, and so she became a mindset coach. Then last year, she was diagnosed with MS. And you would think somebody who has an awesome mindset practice would, see that as just a minor bump in the road and no big deal. But of course, it's not when you're diagnosed with a chronic illness. Anybody who's diagnosed with a chronic illness, it's going to be a little more than just a minor bump in the road. So I wanted you to hear from somebody who is both a mindset guru and who is dealing with chronic health conditions, how those two things go together. I really believe that how we think about our illness, how we think about our bodies, how we talk to ourselves, the practice of our thoughts does make a difference in how we feel. It makes a difference in how we enjoy life. It also literally makes a difference in our health. You guys have heard me say on this podcast multiple times that there are 3 things you really need to address if you want to get better. If you want to improve your fibromyalgia, there's 3 things you need to look at. Number 1, there really is something going wrong in your body, and we've got to treat that and address that. That may mean medication. That may mean supplements or treatments or therapies. There really are things we need to fix. Number 2, you got to address your lifestyle. That's things like how your sleep hygiene, right? Like, do you go to bed on time? How do you get off your electronic devices before bed to make sure you get good sleep? What's your diet like? Are you moving your body? How good are you at saying no and pacing yourself? So your lifestyle is another huge piece of it. But number 3, the third piece that you have to address to live your best life is your mindset. It's how you think about your body, like I said, how you think about your illness, and just the self-talk that you have. How, the guilt you might feel over, taking time out for yourself. That is part of the mindset. And so I wanted Courtney to come and talk to all of you guys because number 1, she really is a mindset guru. But more importantly for you, she understands living with a chronic illness, and that it's not just about thinking positive. It's not just about saying things like, I'm healthy and happy. We'll talk about that in the interview. It's about being real and how you talk to yourself. So this is a super important topic, and I'm so excited to be able to bring this interview to you to help you kick your year off right. I will also you'll hear in this interview that I mention other podcast episodes where we've talked about other topics related to this. If you're interested in what those specific podcast episodes were, make sure you go to today's show notes, fibromyalgiapodcast.com/54. And on today's notes, we will have the link to the podcast episode where I talk about your world revolves around your healing, not your illness, and a bunch of other things. So enjoy. All right, awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Courtney. I'm so excited to talk about mindset with you.
I'm so excited too. So excited.
Perfect. So I always like to, when I have guests on the show, I always like to talk a little bit about your story because I think it gives context to everyone who's listening on, where is this all coming from? So I know you actually have quite a long history of health stuff. I'll use that word. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about your story?
Okay, so I will take my long story and make it a little bit shorter, but the two things do kind of go together. So back in 2019, I was part of a research study, and you could say, why was I part of a research study? Well, when I was born, I have a heart condition called tetralogy of Fallot, which means there's four things that had to be repaired in my heart. I had the full repair. So growing up, I was always the quote unquote heart baby. I had the blue baby syndrome. That was the thing. When I turned 18 and I finally went to college, it was like, okay, now we'll let you play sports. Now you actually can do things. And it was just, I was used to it, right? Which I don't know how used to going back and forth to hospital visits and stuff like that, but it was like, this was nothing for me now. I was so used to it. So I was contacted in 2019 by Children's Hospital of Philadelphia because that's where I had all of my procedures and I still go to Children's for my doctor's visits. And they asked if I wanted to be part of a study based on how my condition, which is tetralogy, is connected with the neurological things going on with me. So I was like, this is awesome. Like before that, I was all into mindset. This is what I've been doing, right? So I was like, of course, I want to know the neurological things. So go to July 30th of 2019. And when I was finished with the study, the last thing that was to take place was that I had to have an MRI. So I had the MRI, and when I was leaving to thank the tech that did the MRI, it was weird to me because there were three adult doctors, meaning they were from the adult portion of the hospital looking at my MRI. And I was like, that's really weird. So when we left, me and my husband were having dinner, and I said, isn't this weird? I just have a really weird feeling that there were doctors in there looking at my scans. And by the time I got home, I had three missed calls from the cardiologist that was in charge of the study. And I had two other calls from other patients or other patient advocates from the hospital. And that was just super weird for me because I haven't had any medical problems. My heart was something I knew I had, but there was nothing going on. So that turned into the cardiologist finally getting in touch with me again the next day and saying that there were just certain things that showed up on my MRI. And because she was a cardiologist, she just gave me all these things. And I was like, okay, well, who you're referring over to me, they're all neurologists and they're all associated with multiple sclerosis. So is what you're telling me what was seen on my scan multiple sclerosis? And of course she said, well, there's no case of MS that's the same, but you're showing signs, so you have to call the neurologist. So where my 2020 was spent, as crazy as everybody else's 2020 was, because I hadn't changed my insurance, I had to make sure that everything I was doing, I was never planning to get MRIs and spinal taps and things like that, right? What had happened though was when I had that research study, I had lost my vision, but I was used to having optic neuritis and I wasn't thinking anything that was crazy about it. I'd had optic neuritis before. It had lasted a week. It had lasted a month. At this point, I had optic neuritis, which means the optic nerve was swollen behind my right eye. So that's what they were seeing. So finally in 2020, I was able to go to my neurologist, and he said, "Okay, well, you do have a lot of the sides that we talk about when we talk about multiple sclerosis, but you're gonna have to go through some tests." So it went from I got this awesome research study to the research study was the thing that saved me to be able to see that I had multiple sclerosis. So after the three MRIs, the 17 blood draws, the spinal tap, the things like that, I was diagnosed with MS. And for me, the one thing I'll say, which I'm sure we'll get into, is that we're going to be talking about mindset, right? And that was what I lived for. That was what my business was based on. That is what I had always studied. And it was this is crazy because how can the mindset queen, the mindset coach who I am, be diagnosed with something neurological that literally is affected in my mind? It was just such a thing. So that's kind of my story. That's why now I'm taking on a different approach where, okay, I have this chronic illness. I've accepted that I have this chronic illness, But because of all the things that I did before I even knew I had this chronic illness, it's put me in this awesome position that I'm in now, where I want to show others how just because you're diagnosed with something, just because you're going through something, you can get the right things in place. But yes, so that is my story.
And a wild one at that. I mean, I bet that was like nowhere on your radar going into that study, you know?
No, not at all. Not at all. And my neurologist thought that he invited me into his cohort. I didn't even know what that was. And he was like, I'm so excited to have you. And then he had a couple residents that came in and met me because he was like, I was one of those cases where I probably never would have went to the neurologist thinking, this is weird. I've already been to the optometrist. I know that I lose my vision. It's fine. And it was a crazy situation where it was like I went for something else and I was diagnosed with this other thing I didn't know I had. So it was kind of just, yeah, it was definitely crazy. It was a windy story, but yes, that's how it got me to where I'm at now.
Wow. Did that like rock your world? or, or were you such a mindset queen that it was just a little bump in the road?
Yes and no. So it did rock my world because I think that any diagnosis, and I've had to read up how like you have to go through the grieving and you have to go through the acceptance and all of those things because me associating my name with having multiple sclerosis wasn't something that I ever thought of. Not because I'm like, I'm just so healthy, this can never happen to me. But I was used to, all right, guys, you know how I am with my heart. If I can do these workouts, if I can do these things, I was just used to that being my identity and being, okay, well, Courtney, she's all about mindset, but she can get through it. Mindset is what got her to where she was. Now you add in multiple sclerosis, and it was kind of like me being like, well, I did everything I could to take care of my mind. So why would this happen to my mind? And yes, now the mindset work that I'm doing, that I've been doing, has helped me tremendously. And that's why it's given me a passion to help others. But at first, and I want to say that because I think that you would assume just because I don't look the part, right? I don't look like I'm sick. I don't look like I should be. I don't sound like I should. It wasn't the mindset work that made me be like, yep. And I was fine because I was so into my mindset practice at first. I still went through all of the things that you go through during a diagnosis. So I just want to say that too. Like, the mindset has helped me tremendously, but I still acted just like anybody else would when they get a diagnosis.
Right, right. And, growing up knowing that you had a heart condition, you had heart surgeries, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, you probably had already done a lot of mindset work around your health, and it's like, okay, Courtney, you think you're so awesome at this. Here, let's give you a little extra challenge.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. That's really what it felt like too, though, because it's just not like you can never think that you're going to get diagnosed with a chronic illness. So that's why I have to say that, because I don't want to come off sounding like I wasn't planning for it. Like, no one's planning for it. It was just such a surprise to me because how could this be me? But I think that others need to hear that. Like, when you're looking around and saying, how could this be me? It can be you, but it's not like it's a punishment. It's not like it's a thing. It's just like a different lifestyle, and learning how to adapt to it. That's why I was like, all right, well, at least I have the tools already in place. I just had to realign my mind to understand what was going to change and what was going to happen, I think.
Right, right. And for people who don't know this about you, I know this about you. Health and fitness was a big part of your life too, right? Like you were in competitions.
Yeah. So I was in a bikini competition, a couple of them. That, yeah. So what I'm getting into that, when back in when I was 20, I was extremely overweight. And it wasn't a lifelong thing. It wasn't something I'd always been because of my heart. I was in a very abusive relationship. I gained a lot of weight. I got up to 260 pounds, and I needed to lose weight because of my heart, obviously, but because of me losing the weight, that's where the mindset came into. And it was like, well, my heart was so good and I could do all those things. I was competing, I was doing the fitness stuff, and the gym is something that it's a lifestyle. So it was something that I got addicted to, and it was something that I enjoyed. So it's, and that, even in that, taking care of my health for all those years definitely helped me manage my multiple sclerosis. Even now, it helps me get through things that you wouldn't think about just because I was already doing it. So that's why when I think people talk about eventually they're going to get back into the gym, or eventually they're going to look at their diet, or eventually they're going to say, okay, well, maybe I want to change what I have going on, but I don't need to do it now. You never know. So it's like, I'm always big about like, let's take care of your health. And that's not looking at a certain number on the scale or looking at a certain amount of time on a run. It's just knowing that you're doing things to better your health, because I know bettering my health is what's helped me better my multiple sclerosis that I didn't even know I was going to be having, obviously. Right. So,
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So, for people who are listening to us having this conversation and hearing us talk about mindset, I've talked a little bit about it on the podcast, about how mindset is how you think about your body, how you think about your illness, your self talk, those kinds of things. But I would love for you, for our conversation here, when you talk about mindset, what do you mean? How do you define that?
so mindset to me is the way that you're talking to the critic, your biggest critic, because your biggest critic is someone that nobody else can hear. It's someone that nobody else has met. It's someone that you're like, you've known this person your entire life, and that person is you, because you are your biggest critic. So I always say it's the person that lives in between your two ears. So for me, mindset is, you can have a growth mindset, you could have a fixed mindset, you could have a bad mindset, you could have a negative, like a good mindset. There's so many different kinds of mindsets that you could have. And I think the word is just thrown around, like, just get your mind in the game. But it's, for me, knowing my mindset and programming my mindset. Because I think one thing that I heard on a podcast years ago, and I couldn't even tell you whose podcast it was, to be honest, I don't know, but it was hearing all the time, like, reprogram your mindset or reprogram your mind. The problem isn't normally that people need to reprogram their mindset, but most people have never programmed their mindset. So what they've heard over and over and over again is just what they've been telling themselves over and over and over and over again. And then you have another thing that comes into a limiting belief because you believed it for so long, and that affects your mindset. So for me, it's taking care of the mindset that you're having all the time. It's celebrating the daily wins, which I'll get into in a minute, but celebrating things, even if they're small. There's no win that's too small, and there's no win that's too big. Like, knowing how to say, okay, every single day is another chance to have another chance. And just by waking up like that and going to sleep with your mind like that, it's not something that happens overnight. It's not something that I'm saying, okay, I was able to hear Courtnajé on this podcast and she's awesome, and I'm going to just change my mind tomorrow. It's a gradual thing. It's a gradual thing. So that's what I think mindset is to me.
Mhm. Mhm. It's the thoughts that we think, it's the life that's going on, like you said, between our 2 years. And I don't think people really like, just to be super clear, we are not saying that your illness is in your head. We
Mhm.
are
Oh,
not.
no, no, no. Yes, no, no.
But how you think does affect how you feel. And there's all kinds of science that supports that too. Yeah.
Yeah, because when I got my diagnosis, what was crazy was that they give you a booklet about all the things you need to change, and it's like, okay, the only thing I needed to change was it was suggested I could add dark chocolate into my diet. That was it. But as far as like the workouts, one of the biggest things being meditation and doing mindset work. That was one of the things in the booklet, and I told my neurologist, like, this is what I do for a living. Like, my tagline is, I change minds for a living. That's what I do. So when it was, you need to learn how to meditate, you need to learn how to do mindset, it was me taking a deeper knowledge into it and actually wanting to see that happen. And like you said, I would never say, we aren't saying like your illness is not in your mind. And that, I think, is something that, at least for, I know people with MS, I know you with fibromyalgia, and I know other people with chronic illnesses, that it's difficult when people are thinking, but you just look so healthy, or like, you don't even sound like that, or like, it's all in her head. It's not all in your head, but you taking care of your own mind is how you're going to be able to react and live at a higher degree. Your energy is going to be at a higher degree. The way that you're taking things in. Because when I went to get my spinal tap, I was talking to the guy that was doing it. I mean, I had like some drugs in me. I wasn't totally there, but I was talking to him, and I was calm. And when I got out of the spinal tap, my husband was like, how was it? What was going on? And I was like, really? I had just taught myself how to say certain affirmations and say certain mantras where it was like I was so focused on not thinking about the worst case scenario. It was like, okay, we're going to go in, we're going to get this done, and it's going to be okay. Whereas I had had other tests done before with my heart, my mentality wasn't the same way when I had a catheterization 6 years before that. It wasn't the same. But working on my mind for as long as I've been working on it definitely changed it. So I could see how doing those things now with having multiple sclerosis, it made it easier. It made it like a more comfortable life for me because I wasn't allowing other things to come in and influence me to think the worst possible scenario. I wasn't even having the time for it. If somebody had that kind of energy and they wanted to tell me the worst things about MS, because I was diagnosed for over 6 months before I told anybody other than probably my parents and my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law and obviously my husband, because I didn't want people to just get me going out there and being like, okay, so now I have this. Because I wasn't complaining about it. I was looking at it as this is my testimony. I was given this for a reason. And to be able to show others how I will help you work on your mindset and show you how it gets better, it gets easier. And even though we have days like good days and bad days, and every day is different, where I could go to sleep tonight and be totally fine and go to wake up tomorrow in the gym and like I can't go because my limbs are tingling or whatever. But my mind isn't looking down at that being like, "Oh my gosh, what's wrong with you today? See how you're failing." Like no, it's like, "Okay, well, I have to listen to my body. I have to do what I have to do, and I know that tomorrow is another chance to have another chance." And that's the way that I took it on. So,
Yeah, definitely, definitely. We've done a couple of podcast episodes, which I'll link in today's show notes for those of you who are listening. Just go to fibromyalgiapodcast.com/54 and you'll get all of today's show notes. But one of the podcast episodes, I talk about the fact that there are a lot of things that we have to do to feel our best. And in doing those, we have to distinguish between I'm doing this because I have fibromyalgia and I can't, versus I'm doing this because it'll help me feel better. So, one thought is focusing on your illness and how things are being taken away from you, right? And the other thought is focused on how I'm going to get better and how I'm going to improve and focused on your healing, right? And there's a big difference between those two thoughts and how you feel, how it affects you emotionally, even how it affects you physically.
yes, totally 100. Well, in saying that, no one looks at somebody charging their phone because the battery's dying as the phone is broken. They just look at it
I
as
love this
you're
analogy.
right. They look at it as like, oh my gosh, I forgot to plug my phone in. I need to charge my phone. And with MS, that's all I'm doing is I'm charging my energy back up. My phone isn't broken. It just needs more energy. And I believe with chronic illness, others need to realize that okay, I don't have as much, like my battery is draining and I know that if I let my battery go to empty, it's not going to be good because I'm not going to be able to get tasks accomplished, and the Courtney that you know isn't the Courtney that you would have known because I'm exhausted and it's just the energy being drained. But if we don't look at people with their phones being like, okay, the phone's done now, it's just recharging the battery. So when you look at it as we're doing this stuff to heal, we're doing this stuff to live, we're doing this stuff to live happily. And even with chronic illness, you can live happily, you can live your best life, right? Like hashtag live my best life. That doesn't change anything. And I know that it's exhausting sometimes, especially when you're having to tell others why you can't do something anymore. It's not because I can't do it. It's not because I'm saying that I'm sick. It's saying that I want to keep my battery as charged as I can, the same way as you wouldn't want your phone battery to go to 20% when you still have 9 hours left in your day. So if I know that those things are going to drain my energy, that's the same thing. I need you to understand that because I don't want my energy drained, this is why we have to do things a little bit different. And it's also being okay because you wouldn't be apologizing to anybody for, wait, just give me a second. Let me just charge my phone battery. So why do you have to say to somebody else, just give me a second, I need to charge my brain? Like having others understand it that way, that's all it is. It's making sure your battery is charged because you don't want your battery to get too low where it's like you can't even function anymore, right?
Totally, totally. And I think a lot of times what makes all of this hard is the extra drama we add to it, right? Like I there have been so many times, so many places where I will, people are doing whatever activity and I'll just go sit down and watch for a little while, and everybody's like, "Oh, are you okay?" Well, there's so much drama I could add to that, like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed," or now all these people are worried about me, but it's not. It's just like, this is what I have to do to take care of myself. Like, well, I got to go charge my phone, right? And not adding the drama makes it easier for everybody. Like, that's where it gets weird, is when we start adding all that drama.
Yes, and not having to have an explanation every single time. Like, you don't owe anybody an explanation for why you couldn't do it. I mean, you can tell them so they can understand, or you can tell them like a short blurb and be like, this is why I can't do it. But I've had other people tell me that have MS, that I've obviously connected with other people with MS, just, to get in on things and like understand more of what I was going to go through. That hearing them talk and like knowing all the stuff I do about mindset, you don't owe anybody an explanation as to why. Like you just said, the drama doesn't have to be there. And learning to be able to tell people, okay, I can't do this right now. And you like at this point now I'm like, MS, I kind of can't. And it would be like, okay, she's saying that she can't. We understand. We got it. It's okay. So but no, you don't have to have an explanation. You don't have to be doing that. You don't have to be doing that. And when I see that, or when I hear that, when I hear people saying that, it's like, you don't have to, because that'll exhaust you even more. If you're trying to charge your battery, what will drain your battery even more is if you're giving even more energy out there saying, look, but this is why I can't, but then this happens and this happens. And you don't owe that huge explanation. It's okay to just say no and go take care of yourself. You can give an explanation later if you want to, but you don't have to give them an explanation while you're going through it. I had to learn that myself because I was like, all right, this is exhausting. Every time no, I just can't. I can't.
Yep. Yep, 100%. And I think as business owners, I have a business, you have a business. As business owners, I think we maybe bump into that a little bit more. Just last week, we're going through all the stuff to like close on a new house and everything else, and someone had called me while I was taking a nap. Right. And so it was a little while before I got back to them. And like, I don't need to tell them that. I don't, sorry, I had to go take a nap because I have fibromyalgia and whatever, right? So what I said, all I said was, I'm so sorry, I was busy and I just got your message.
Yeah. That's all. And you know what? When you say that, now that you said that, that's what I found myself giving like huge explanations, like almost like I was writing a paper. And finally it was like I didn't need to. I think that's what I told you. I was like, all right, when I kind of the holidays got the best of me and I was supposed to send something to you and I hadn't done it. And I was like, no, Tammy's gonna understand why I'm saying this. Like she's gonna get it. I don't have to give this big explanation. But it was really that where I was like, I don't have to give this explanation to anybody. The answer is just the answer is just the answer. Like I was busy. I couldn't do it. Because I used to feel guilty for taking naps. Because it was like everybody knew that like Courtney gets up in the morning and she goes to the gym at 5 a.m. and she gets it done. And then I was like, oh, I never take naps. Well, guess what? Now I do. And I don't just go say like, hey, because 2 days ago I went to the gym. When I got home, I took a nap and I woke up at 8 o'clock. So it was like, all right, I took an hour nap, but that recharged my battery for the rest of the day. And it was the first time I was like, okay, I don't need to feel guilty about this. That's crazy.
Right, right. So, for somebody who's listening to us talking right now and thinking, well, that's easy for you all to say, just like not give all the explanations, but I've got all these people in my life who are pestering me, or like I feel guilty anytime I take time for myself. What do you say to those people? How can they start to shift that?
So what I would say, what I did, and this is partially mindset because one of the things that I do every single day is I write down 10 things. You don't have to write down 10. So this is not like me telling you write down 10. If you do 9, you're not, you can write down one. But one goal that I have for the day, what is the thing that I'm most looking forward to for the day? If you're looking forward to what you're going to have for dinner, that's fine. If you're looking forward to like I'm going to be on a podcast today, that's great. If you're looking forward to whatever the show is you watch coming on Tuesday nights, like I watch This Is Us. I was looking forward to that. So that's what one thing I was looking forward to. But shifting that to be able to like, all right, I'm not going to forget about the things that I already set for myself. I'm not going to do that. But the other thing that I think worked for me was having the people, the closest people to me, not everybody, but the closest people to me actually understand more of what my disease was. That way it didn't sound like, okay, she's just using this again and she's just saying that again, because it made me feel better. And when I said that I was exhausting myself, like, this is exhausting me, you need to look this up, do a little bit more research for me. Because if you do more research for me, you will understand without me having to say what it is that's wrong with me. So I think that's how I dealt with that piece, if that answers it.
Mhm. Yeah, totally. I think educating the people around us can be super helpful. One of the tools that a lot of my clients use is the spoon theory, and we'll have a link in the show notes for people who may not be familiar. But it's just a way of explaining the way life is for us, and it kind of becomes a little bit of shorthand of, I'm running out of spoons, or whatever it might be. I had another client who would use a bowl of rocks, and the level of rocks was like how much energy she had for the day, for her people to understand, because it's exhausting to always have people ask, so how are you today? Right. And we're like, oh, just fine. Do you really want to
Yeah.
know? I'm just fine.
Yeah. That's what family was doing for me too. I mean, they thought that they were helping, and it wasn't like they weren't coming from a place, but it was almost like, so how are you today? Like you just said, just like, I'm not going to give like five things that are going wrong. And normally I'm not going to give anything that's going wrong, when I think that really this is just like the symptoms that I have. They're just symptoms. They're not anything that's bad. They're not anything that's really wrong, you know?
Right, right, exactly. And I think some of this goes back to what you mentioned earlier about how we haven't programmed our minds. Because the stronger your own mindset is, like, if I know I'm doing what I need to do because it's what I need to do and it's going to help me feel my best, and it really doesn't matter what everybody else thinks, and I'm strong in that, then the other stuff doesn't affect me as much. And I think that's part of what you were meaning by programming our minds, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So programming, and when we talk about health and things like that, one thing that I believe I said this already, like the numbness in my leg. So I had a lot of numbness in my, I'm reaching my leg, like I don't, it's my in my left leg. And to the point, and I don't know if you have any of this fibromyalgia, but with MS, you could have pain like that. And I went to get a pedicure, and it felt like somebody was taking a piece of sandpaper and just scrubbing my leg, and it just wouldn't go away. And those feelings were like that for over a week. And it was, okay, how am I going to get rid of this? Like, even taking a shower hurt, right? So while I was going through it, it was like, what am I going to do? I decided that I was going to say, okay, I'm going to give my gratitudes for my right leg, because my right leg is awesome and my right leg is so healthy. And I just focused on how amazing it was. My right leg feels great today. And by focusing on that and still saying, like, I love both of my legs, and just doing those kind of simple mindset techniques, all of a sudden it was 10 days later, and I was like, oh, I'm not numb anymore. But I focused on being thankful for the other leg, because I knew that I was so grateful for it. I knew that when I put my pants on, I was so grateful for being able to put my pants on, because I remember what it was like when it hurt to put my pants on. Not because they were too tight, but because just like riding them up there felt like on my shin, like, this is pain that I can't tolerate ever. And then it went away and it didn't come back. And I know that it can and it could and it might not. But by focusing on the part of my body that was healthy and just being so thankful and being so grateful, that's one thing. Because if I can see today, I'm grateful. If I can breathe today, I'm grateful. If I can lift my arms up today, I'm grateful. When I go to the gym, I know what my strength is, and I haven't lost any strength as of yet. And I hope not to lose any. But if I were to lose strength, I know that I'm so thankful for the strength that I have. And that's where I go into being like, my gratitudes, being grateful for even the small things. That's what I've done with my body, because I know what it's like to not be able to do some of the things. And I want to make sure that the things that can get done, I'm grateful for, because I don't want to ever forget the things that I should be grateful for. So, yeah.
Right. And I think too, like what we focus on grows. And so if we start focusing on what's going wrong, we just see more of what's going wrong. And if we focus on what's going right, we see more of what's going right.
Yes. That's a whole going down the rabbit hole, because you can go down the rabbit hole and it could be just something super small and going to, because when all the things happened with me having an abnormal MRI, that was the longest night of my life. I probably thought of I mean, everything worst case scenario could have possibly been happening. And it was so different for me because I never think of the worst possible case scenario, but I also had never been in a position where the doctor's like, you need to call us back. And by the time I got home, it was too late. So they were going to call me back the next day. And I had to focus on, okay, what could this be? What could this be? What could this be? And after having that night of, that was probably one of the longest nights of my life, if not the longest, I told myself I would never do that again. Because even though, yes, now I've been diagnosed, I have multiple sclerosis, I could have focused on all the bad things that could happen. And I know that becoming diagnosed with any chronic illness, so and so is going to tell you how her cousin's sister's friends had the same disease as you. And do you know what's going to happen? Or they look like you and they were never sick. And having to explain, well, every case looks different. Every single person is different. You can't have a cookie cutter for a chronic illness. And once I understood that, it was like, okay, I'm not going to give my energy to going down that rabbit hole because
Right. Because it's
I'm
not
not going to
helpful.
find the best case. No, not at all. Not
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah. So focusing on the gratitude was one of the things that you really used for yourself. What were some of the other mindset techniques and things that you used?
Okay. So the daily
I should say
win,
use
having
because I'm sure that's not past tense.
no that I yeah, that I use all the time anyway. So every day I will think of my daily win, whether it be right now, and right now it's 6 o'clock in the evening where I am, or if it was, 9 o'clock right before I went to bed, but focusing on one thing that is my daily win. So when I wake up the next morning and I get into my mindset practice, and let me backtrack right there and say, you don't have to do your mindset practice in the morning. If I'm not one that's like, you have to get up at 5, you have to do it. I know that's what I do, but I also have a chronic illness and I understand. I'm not going to tell somebody you need to be up at 5 a.m. This is when you get started. When you are ready, the way that I look at my mindset practice is, you wouldn't go somewhere without brushing your teeth, right? Like that's a non negotiable. So for me, my mindset practice is a non negotiable. Normally, I will do that after the gym when I'm already back home and I'm settled down. And it's probably like around 8 o'clock. I'm like, okay, my daily win yesterday was this. So I am grateful for what that daily win is. And sometimes it could be as simple as, I had a $3 off coupon for Starbucks and I got a free drink. Like it was something really small, but it was a win. So there's no such thing as a small win. So I had my daily win the night before. I talk about it to myself and I write it down when I'm giving my gratitude, because like, remember your daily win yesterday. So what is your daily win going to be today? You're not going to know what your daily win is until you want it. And then it gets into a habit where it's like, okay, I can't wait to see what my daily win is. I cannot wait for this. So with the gratitudes, I do that. And then I have my mantras, which depending on how I am doing and depending on what's going on in my business, my mantras are going to change. But normally my mantra every single day is, I am so happy and I'm so healthy. I'm so thankful. And I will repeat it to myself. I'm so happy, I'm so healthy, and I'm so thankful, and say it 10 times. And when I tell people to do that, sometimes they'll be like, 10 times? Yes, because by the time you get to number 10, you're going to be laughing at yourself. You're not going to be, it's kind of difficult to be saying, I am happy, I am healthy. You're not going to be able to do that and be like, I'm happy, I'm healthy. Just by saying it makes you happy. Just by doing it makes you happy. So those are the kind of things when it comes into my mindset practice that I do on the daily. Some other things that I do, not just for myself, but I've told clients to do, is painting the picture of what you want to look like, not physically, but what you want your day to look like, what you want you to be looking at your life like. So, not doing the whole going down the rabbit hole like, well, I woke up this morning, I'm kind of tingly, I'm already not having a good day. I feel myself having like chronological, like any of those things, like cognitive things that are going on. I focus on the good at first, even if it's the bad that's going on. I want to give myself that positive energy. And that is one thing that I've seen work for me and work for others and work for clients. And I know that it works because it's so important to be programming your mindset for where you want to take it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of times when people are talking about mindset and talking about mantras or affirmations, I think a lot of times, how do I want to say this? Um, it has to be something that our brains will accept, right? Like if I'm sitting here at 300 pounds and I'm telling myself I'm 125, it's like, no, no, you're not. But you can find a way for that for to lead you in that direction, but where your brain still thinks that it's true. So you talked about your mantra of being happy and healthy, and all of that. There might be people listening who are like, but I'm not. Right. So for those of you who are finding yourself in that situation, this is the mantra I used when I was first diagnosed and really working on getting better. I just kept telling myself every day, I do the things that I need to do, I'll be a little bit better. Every day I get a little bit better. And, after enough years of that, I'm a whole lot better, right? But that was a positive thought that led me in the direction that I wanted to go and that my brain could accept.
And I think when you're saying that, for someone that could hear that, right? Like when I said, okay, I was in the stage of like grief and those kind of things. And like when I said that's kind of a double yes, because yes, my mindset did help me, but I was like, I'm not healthy. This is not happening. This is not working. This is not that. And that's kind of where the whole it's another chance to have another chance. Every day is another chance to have another chance. Another day to have another day. So even if waking up, that was my mantra then was it's another chance to have another chance. I know that it's another chance to have another chance. Just looking at like that, waking up and knowing that kind of got me out of bed in the morning because when all the things were happening with COVID and I was still going through all my medical tests and those kind of things, I knew that I didn't have to change anything, right? Like I had said, exercise was a big part of that. So the gyms were closed. Like, does that mean I'm going out and I have to do something to physically get myself out there because it was helping my health? Even if it was a bad day, I would do it for 10 minutes, just being like, okay. And when I got tired and I stopped. I didn't just keep pushing myself, pushing myself, pushing myself, pushing myself because I knew that tomorrow was another chance to have another chance. And so I think that mantra probably would make more sense because I don't want to come off sounding like I'm happy, I'm healthy, and you should be too. I had to get to that point. But like I had said in the beginning, it's not reprogramming your mind, it's actually programming it for the first time. So as you're doing that, that's how your mantras and your affirmations and all that can change.
Hmm. How I have a feeling I know how you feel about this, but I am assuming that these mantras and these affirmations are all very personal. You can't just borrow somebody else's.
No, I think that you can't just borrow somebody else's, but you can listen to others to see what is going to vibe with you, if you will. Because there are some podcasts, I'm looking at my phone what the name of it is, but there's a couple, not podcasts, different playlists on Apple Music. And with those playlists, there's a bunch of affirmations. There's ones for money mindset, there's ones for just regular mindset, I guess, if you will. There's ones for prosperity, there's ones for health, there's ones for those kind of things. But what I used to do, and this is before I had my diagnosis, and I still do this to this day, I will listen to some affirmations before I go to sleep. I will listen to them. And all of a sudden, it'll be like, oh, that does make sense for me. I can vibe with that. That does make sense because what would make sense with me when I first got diagnosed isn't what would make sense right now because my mind has come further from where it was. And I think they are personalized. So for me to tell Tammy, you should use this. This is what you should use. No, it's going to be what really goes with your vibrations, like where your energy is, where your frequency is, where all of those things are. And when all of us are at different frequencies, depending, like I could have a relapse and you're great. You could have a relapse and I'm not, like, no one's going to be on the same path. So why or how could you tell somebody to take the same, you can't use the same map if you guys are going to two different locations.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, the map has to be personalized to where you're going. but knowing how to maneuver it is what's going to change the thing. So yeah, the ones that make sense for you are the ones that make sense for you.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that you said that I just want to bring people back to real quick is talking about how we change and how we grow. And you talked about the fact that, your mind's not in the same place, the same affirmations, same mantras don't work. And I just had this picture of like, you start working out at the gym, you're maybe using a 10-pound weight. Well, you can't just keep using 10 pounds for your whole life, right? Like that's gonna change. And so we need to be revisiting what we're thinking and how we're thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. Like that was perfect what you just said. The whole like you can't just keep using the 10-pound weights, right? You can't use the 5-pound weights. You have to grow. So like the growth mindset that you're adopting is like, okay, I'm going to change. I know that I'm going to keep lifting. And I have a graphic that I've used for a lot of my programs, but it has a brain and it's like pushing up. You might have seen it before, but I've used it over and over and over again, where it's a brain like pushing a weight up. And it's like, that's your mindset practice. That's all it is. It's like, you have to just keep going, because once you stop, you can go back to it, but you're not going to be at the same strength that you were at a month before you stopped. Right. So yeah, that's how I look at that.
Right. And that also brings up the idea that we're not just going to do this one and have it fixed and then like be done. Right. It's like you're not just going to go take a shower and that'll be like the only shower you need for the rest of your life.
No. And then
Right?
you're just clean forever. Right. Yeah. No, that is not what it is.
So for people who are listening who are like, okay, I get the importance of this. I understand what you're saying. How would somebody get started? What would you suggest? The listeners of this podcast pretty much all have fibromyalgia or something going on. And so they may not necessarily be in the best place. How would somebody get started?
I think this is what I teach clients. So this is what I think. This is what I teach my clients, and this is what I tell others to do, even before the MS thing. Because like people knew me for my heart, and they'd be like, "Well, how do you do that? Like, how did you get into the gym? How did you do this?" It's starting for me. What I tell clients to do is paint the picture that you want to see of yourself, meaning how you want to feel. How is this? How is it that you want to feel every day? There's no wrong answer. So even if it's like, oh, I just want to feel healthy, what does that mean? What does that mean? And if you don't want to write it down, you can record it. Like if I know for me, when I had lost my vision, what was frustrating was I couldn't type anything. It wasn't the same thing, and it was taking me forever. And like now you have somebody that's like master's level degree and I can't even type. What is, so if that means not writing it down, if that means just you recording it and you are talking to yourself and just saying like, this is what healthy means for me. This is what my body means for me. This is where I want to go. This is what I want to feel like, or I want my health to look like. You can do that. And then when you focus on the things that are actually important, because for me, that's like when I was prepping for a competition, for a bikini competition, there were certain things that didn't matter. There were certain things that I wasn't working out as much because I was in a different class than somebody else. So it's the same thing with this, right? When you're getting started, you're looking at the things and you're saying, okay, this is what I want my health to look like. And this is how I'm going to get there. But you're not going to know how you're going to get there if you're not actually knowing where you're going. So for me to get started, what you would be looking at is, all right, let me say, how do I want my health to look? Whether, like I said, whether it's writing it down, whether it is saying it out loud, because I know that a lot of us with chronic health, and I have experienced it myself, you can't do the same things that you always could do when you have certain symptoms. So you can record it, you can write it, you can do how you want. But then I would also add in the gratitudes, because if you start with, what are the 10 things that I'm thankful for? I write mine down because I believe in the whole pen to paper thing, not even typing them, I write them down. But if you can't, or that's too much, say them out loud. And then when you say them out loud and you record them, you could just replay that for yourself every single morning. Like, I am so grateful for the sunshine. I am so grateful for the food that I just ate. I am so grateful for me, I was so grateful for the neurologist that I had, because he took me on and I had no idea who he was and he was so happy to have me. I am so grateful for the gyms being reopened. Whatever it is that you're grateful for, when you're focusing on those things first, it puts your energy up higher and it gives you more energy when you're beginning your day. And like I said, I'm not going to tell you to do it at 5 a.m. When you are ready to do it, I would suggest doing it in the morning, because you're going back and focusing on what your daily win was. And going back to that, when your day is over, when you are finished, when you know that you're done for the day. Like for me, I'm done for the day at 7 p.m. Like there's no other calls that are going to happen at 7 p.m. I know that that's when I'm okay. I'm not watching any more webinars. I'm not taking on any more clients. That's when I'm done. That would be when I would look at my daily win. Because even though I'm not going to bed yet and I'm not finished completely, that's when I'm done for the day. So at 7 is when I will look at that and I would say, okay, this is what I had to celebrate, and that's where I would start. And then eventually you would get into what is my mantra? What is the way that I want to feel? And being able to generate that for yourself, not having somebody else tell you, like we had talked about, right? It's not just something that it works for Courtney, so I know that's what's going to work for me. No, it's going to be what feels most comfortable with you. How is your language? There might be things that I say that somebody is going to be like, I totally get it. Well, I'm from the Northeast. I'm from Jersey, right? It could be somebody, I used to live in Carolina. They might be saying the same thing, but their language might be differently or might speak differently to the way that they're saying it to themselves. So it has to be your own language, the way that you feel most comfortable, the things that you are saying the most. Because if I were to say, oh my gosh, make your mantra every morning, I can lift more today than I could yesterday. And you're like, lift? What are you talking about? I don't lift anything. I lift a soup can. Like, it's not going to be the same. So that is what I would say. And just start with, how do you want your health to look? Doesn't have to be physically, but how do you want it to look? Because you're allowed to have it be however you want it to be. And it's easier to feel better and accept what you have going on. It's okay. A chronic illness, other people have them too. We seem to understand each other better than others that don't have chronic illnesses, right? So there's other people out there that are going to understand you. There's other people out there that might not, but you also don't know where their mind is. Because remember, the biggest critic that we all have lives in between our two ears. So when we're focused on somebody else and we're saying, okay, that's their inner critic speaking to you. That's not your inner critic speaking to you. That's theirs. So you have to kind of also take that also, like, all right, she might not get what I'm going through, so that's why she has this opinion, but I'm not going to give my energy away because that's not how I started off my morning. So that's how I would suggest getting started. And that, for me, that changed a lot of things, and I've been doing it for so long. It really does change so much. It changes your health so much. It really does.
I love that question of what do I want my health to look like? And my encouragement to you listening is to ask that question and not just think about things like, well, I don't want to have pain anymore. I would encourage you to think about more what it is that you're going to be doing. So if you had less pain, what would be the things you would be doing? Maybe it's crawling around on the ground with your grandkids, or maybe it's going after that promotion at work because you know you have the energy to have it, or whatever it might be. But think about not just the abstracts of less pain or more energy, but like what would you do if you had those things? What would your life actually look like if you were in that place?
Yes, totally, 100%. And I think that's almost when I work with people and we talk about like their income goals and things like that. And it's always, okay, well, what is your why? Why do you want that? Because also the same amount of pain, like you just said, what are you going to do with less pain? Does it mean that you don't have to sleep as much? You don't have to charge your battery for as long? Or once you know what you're going to be doing, how can I charge my battery so I make sure it's at like 100%? And I am sure that that is where it's going. Because if you're just saying like, oh, well, I might charge my battery later, I might not. And then when you get to where you're going, you're like, oh my goodness, my battery's only at 29%. Like right now, my MacBook is at 64 because I made sure that I charged it before I got on a podcast with Tami, right? Like that's what I did. The same should be said for your health. If you know you're doing certain things, why is it that I needed a longer charge on my phone or on my MacBook? Because I knew what I was going to be doing, right? What you just said makes so much sense because it's like, okay, why do you want less pain, or why is that reason, or what could you do with your life looking differently? What is the reason for it? I agree 100%.
Right, because none of us want to go to bed on time. None of us really want to eat certain ways. Like those are the things that we do so that we can have other things, right?
Right, right,
So
right,
yeah, that's
right.
awesome. So how long would somebody, so somebody who might just be starting with the things that you suggested, and they do it once and they're like, I don't know if this helped. How long, like at what point would you think that people would start to see a benefit from doing this work?
I think with the gratitudes, and I think with the what I want my health to look like, because I do the same thing with business, right? What do you want your business to look like? What do I want this to look like? When you do that, the more, if you just record it once. So when I'm saying recording, instead of writing it down, if you just record it and you listen to it, it becomes more of a reality for you. And it gets to be something that you're comfortable with. I would say after doing it for 5 days, you're going to feel somewhat different. But I think that doing it over and over and over and over repeatedly and not feeling bad, not feeling bad. Are you listening to me? Not feeling bad that you miss a day or something happens. Because the other thing with chronic illness is you might be golden today. You might be, everything is fine. And then something happens tomorrow and it's like, oh my goodness, I couldn't. Not feeling guilty, not feeling bad, not feeling like I just need to start over again. No, you have 5 minutes, get over it. You missed a day, it's okay. Now we're on to the next, because you can't look backwards and say, oh my goodness, I can't believe I missed yesterday, but you're not going to miss tomorrow. So just keep focusing on where you're going forward. I think that it really does take, like, I could say it 5 days, I could say 2 or 3 days, like just actually looking at yourself and saying, okay, this is what I want my health to look like. And this is why I'm grateful. I think those things have like an instant change, because you're actually taking accountability for your own health. And the reason why I say accountability for your own health, you're not taking accountability for everybody else around you to tell you how you should feel, or to tell you what you should be going through, or to tell you anything else. When you are taking accountability for your own and not accountability for anybody else, it preserves your energy and it changes your mindset. So that's what I would say. So there's like no amount of time. I just know the longer that you do it, the easier it is and the better it is for you.
Right. And it's one of those things, I'm sure too, that just like keeps getting better. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It just keeps getting better. It's like a fine aged wine. Like it just keeps getting better.
I love it. I love it. So let's go ahead and start wrapping this up. I know we're about at time. So I would love for you to just speak to the people listening, like from your heart, from your experience. What do you want to tell them? What do you want to share with them? What do you wish that they knew?
I want to tell them, I wish that they knew that you often are given tests, and the tests have to come before the testimony. And that is something that I believe I have talked about for a long time. And when I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, as scary as it was, I think that it was scarier for people around me. And so that kind of gave me more fear, and they didn't intend that. But I want you to know that there are so many more people out there that have worked on their mindset, that they've worked in through their diagnosis. They have gone on to have testimonies, and it's not always going to be the worst case scenario. You're not always going to have the worst possible thing happen that they tell you could happen but probably won't, and they don't mention that part of it, right? So I want them to know that if you change your mind, you will change your life. It doesn't mean your disease is going to go away. It doesn't mean that your illness is going to be gone. I know that my disease, my illness is going nowhere. I have multiple sclerosis, and I'm proud to say it, because I know that my testimony has been given to me to show others that they can get through it too. So that's what I would like to say. I don't want anybody to look at it as this is the worst possible thing. No, like this is your testimony that you're building right now. And I believe in you, and I know that change your mind and you will change your life. I promise.
That is the perfect thing to end on. So I'll just say thank you again for being here and sharing with us.
Thank you for having me. I loved it.
Yes, it's been so much fun. So everybody, just make sure you go to fibromyalgiapodcast.com/54. We'll have how you can connect with Courtney if you'd like to do that. We'll have links to a couple other podcast episodes that are some of the things that we've been talking about today. And yes, change your mind, you'll change your life. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
And that wraps up another episode of the Fibromyalgia Podcast. If you're ready to see if working with a fibromyalgia coach can help you feel better faster, visit fibromyalgiapodcast.com, where you can schedule a complimentary consultation to explore your options. During this call, we'll discuss your fibromyalgia journey, what your needs and challenges are, and give you recommendations on how to reach your goals the quickest way possible. Thank you for tuning in today, and join us next time as we explore more ways to help you take back control of your life and health. My music and sound editing were done by Daniel Munkus at Subtle Soup Records. Podcast management and creative copy by Sonia Louise of Performance Podcasting.